Okay. So, Smaim of Vishoma Via. Apparently, there was a share given on this last year, and I'm up against greatness. So, forgive me. Maybe we can create a little bit of a new version of it. But
we'll see who remembers it.
The general. This is the mimer is generally about the power of minhagim and mitzvahs derabanan. But I find it to be a very interesting mimer because it's based on a pasuk in this week's parsha, which is V'shoma via as nidra, which is as it's about when a father hears his daughter making a neder, and he's matir it in his mind, and then that's what the mimer is based on, and then the mimer goes into a whole explanation of the power of minhagim and the mitzvahs derabanan. So we're gonna try to look at it a little bit at why specific the specific nekuda that out there is pointing out over here. It's a very interesting concept in general. You know, I was thinking one of the things that we care about in life is the mitzvah of esrog, for example. And the mitzvah of esrog is one of those things where you go to a mecher esrogim, there's 10, 20 people out there, and they're selling, and you come in, and everybody has their little thing that they're looking for, and a lot of people feel like after the more time you spend choosing your esrog, the more time the mecher esrogim looks at your face to see how much they can charge you for your esrog. And a lot of times, you know, you're like, does God really care what my esrog looks like? It's a question. No, chas v'shalom, not you. Like that.
He cares about yours.
I'm saying that a machshava zar can enter your mind. It's like, is this what it's really all about? Is it and kahena v'kahena rabba. You know, when you walk into a matzah bakery, which matzah do you choose? Do you choose the regular one, or a Tanur Rishon, or Rishon, and it goes up exponentially? So, Taka, where does this concept come from, and why does it matter? And this mimer, we're going to learn this concept of the power of mitzvahs derabanan, that really they are what make us experience ahava rabbah. We get to experience the true love of the Eibishter. Really, during the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, this wasn't necessary. First, because in the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, you know, this was the establishment of the Shlomo HaMelech building the Beis Hamikdash, and everybody was in a way in a spiritual high. So we didn't need anything else. The big taiva was to experience God. So, as a matter of fact, the biggest problem that they had in the times of the Beis Hamikdash is that people had getchkas in their house. They had these little figurines. Actually, lately they've dug up a lot of them in Yerushalayim from the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, and it says that almost every house had in it a getchka. And you think to yourself, during the times of the first Beis Hamikdash, yeah, that was their problem. But the thing is, we don't even relate to that. Like who today?
That was their smartphone.
Maybe.
It spoke to them?
Yeah, but basically what people were looking for is an easier spiritual high than having to go to the Beis Hamikdash. But one thing that they had, that they were naturally, that was their attraction. There was no cell phones, and there was no other things. But as the world progressed and the taivas, you know, if you go today to Yerushalayim and you go to the old city of Yerushalayim, you see what was really going on during the times of the second Beis Hamikdash. There was these beautiful Roman roads, and the taivas became very, very different. And at that point, a different thing was required because the people no longer had this desire. Their desire was no longer to be close to the Eibush, and then they needed Ahava Rabbah. And that's when we find that all the mitzvahs, the Rabbanon and the Minhagim started to proliferate. What did they do? What did it do for us? It allowed us to bring down the Ahava Rabbah from the Eibishter. It revealed a love, an abundance of love. Now this comes from two different directions. Number one, if I love you, I'm going to care about the details of you. That means that both from the direction of the Eibishter, it's like if the more you love something, the more you care about protecting it and the details.
Notice the details.
Yeah, but also for ourselves. What happens when I care about details in my life? Going back to the esrog, I can tell you that in my own case, the more time I spend choosing my esrog, the more I experience the mitzvah every time I do the mitzvah. So I myself, the person themselves, when they're careful and they add in their minhagim and in the mitzvah derabanan, they have a completely different connection to the Eibishter, and they bring down this Ahava Rabbah. We're going to learn the Maimer inside. I'm going to start over here on page 168. It says V'shoma Avira as I don't remember if it's Nidra or Nadara. What is Nidra? Okay. I looked at it again in Chumash and I forgot again. It says Lahavin Inyan Diktuke Seifrim Sha'anu Reim Kema'at Shekol HaTalmud Mole Mahalachas V'Chumrius Sheichmiru Chazal V'Hoisifu Kamo Gedarim V'Syagim LaTeira Shebechsav. Yeah, let's understand why did it. We're trying to understand where does this all come from? Really, if the Eibishter is the one that wanted us to do all these mitzvahs, then why did he not tell it to us at the time that he gave us the Torah Shebechsav? But Inyan moving Kamoshe Kasav Razal, pasuk. This is from Shir Hashirim. The pasuk Kitovim Deidecha Miyayin. He says, I want your love more than I want your wine. Amru Knesset Yisrael. Arevim olai divrei seifrim yosem miyenu shel Torah. Like these things that the Rabbanan are teaching me, these mitzvahs, the Rabbanan are more dear to me than even the deeper part of Torah Shebechsav. Pirish yenu shel Torah, hu pnimius haTorah v'seidos. He's like even the seidos and the pnimius haTorah of Torah Shebechsav are not the same as these mitzvahs the Rabbanan. K'mosh Amar Azal. Nichnas yayin yotza seid says divrei seifrim arevim al Knesset Yisrael yoser miseidos haTorah ki kol hagdorim v'achomiyos shebedivrei Razal v'darchei musar shebe'agodos u'pirkei avos kulam nimshachim bebechinas Ahava Rabbah. Why do we appreciate, like we said earlier, because these little things, these added things from the Rabbanan and then the Mefarshim and then the Minhagim, etc., they come from a place of Ahava Rabbah. Kamoshe Kasav Ahavti Eschem Amar Hashem. Kamoi Lemashal Adam Machmas Avasai Al Benoi. When a person loves their child, Medaktik Ima Yoser Lahosev Alav Shmira Me'ula B'Syagim Ugdarim B'Chol Efshari Abal Karchai Sheyeh Menuka Mikal V'Kel. He's going to be very, very careful in the way he treats his child. To make sure, because the more you love and the more you feel that the child has the potential for greatness, the more you're going to make sure that you're medactic on every detail. So he says, "V'chein chafetz me'od sheyimtza chein v'seichel b'yeshes seid." That I care very much about the amount of effort that is put into it. It says, when we talk about gemstones, diamonds, yeah, the more valuable your stones are, I I will put them into a box, and I'll put the box inside another box. The more I care about something, the more I will protect it. So it says, Kach machmas gedel avasi yisbarach eleinu machmir umedagdik oleinu. Because of the Eibishter's love for us, he is machmir and medagdik. It's a very interesting question. People always debate. Do you want to go to a Rav that's machmir? Do we like people that are machmir? A lot of times when we look at people that are machmir, we're like, okay, he's a machmir, you know, stringent. And then we look at I'm going to go to a Mekel Rav. So it says, what is really the right way? So it says, a machmir has a very special mile, but the thing is that what happens is we misunderstand sometimes what a machmir means. That's the problem. It's like a machmir is really the right way. If you're truly machmir for the right reasons, then a machmir is the right way. That means you are someone that cares about every detail in life. But why? Because you love the Eibishter. And if you love the Eibishter, then that is going to always shine through, no matter what. The fact that you love the Eibishter. We're going to see in a minute. We're going to discuss it a little bit more. It says, "B'dikduk yisefim shehein heimo divrei teirasei hanimshachas mahava rabba b'siyagim ogdarim lezakiseinu l'toiv lanu sheniya nekayim lefanav yizbarach." Okay, that's what we the more again the mitzvahs, the rabbanon, and the different things that we do to protect the Torah and to put ourselves into a position that we don't. Like there's a lot of mitzvahs, by the way. Again, I mentioned before in the first Beis HaMikdash, there was no such concept as a shul in the first Beis HaMikdash, really. Although now there's a little bit of a debate because they're finding some synagogues and they're saying that they may have been going on simultaneously, but the way we know it, the Beis HaMikdash was the place, and davening was not the same. They didn't have Shachris, Mincha, Maariv. It was a very different experience. And all these things really were introduced at a later point. He says when that taka happened, the first Beis HaMikdash, it was enough. That was enough. Why? Ki hoisen mono as havaya ruchenu veloy mashchenu chevle avoises avosanu letayves gashmis. He says we did not have yet these type of tayves. It's a very interesting thing in general. Lahavdil alav avdalas, but sometimes when we look at the people that get attracted to religion in a very simplistic form, they go out there and they don't confuse me with the facts. Don't introduce any thinking. The minute that you confuse me with the facts, I don't have any. It doesn't fit in. But in a way, it's a beautiful thing because we have that concept in Yiddishkeit. It's a very important concept in Yiddishkeit. Before we go on any sort of journey, before we start learning, we have to accept upon ourselves that the Eibishter is one, right? So there is this concept of the simple acceptance. However, as the world progressed, it became much more difficult to truly experience that. I once had a discussion with someone about this idea. I was reading through Jewish history, and I was written in a very secular format, and I was discussing all the different wars and the Jewish warlords in history, etc. And it felt very wrong. It's like it so doesn't gel with what we consider to be Yiddishkeit. So I discussed it with someone, with a mashpia, and he was saying that there's always a zelo umazeh in the world, and that means back then that was the way of the world. There were wars, and we were also at that stage of our avodah. However, within the wars of the Jewish people, we had halachas. And even in back in those times, there were differences. But as the world progressed, our avodah today is not necessarily with swords and knives and in conquering. It becomes more and more darkistic until Mashiach comes. So the avodah changes as the world continues. So it says in the times of the Beis HaMikdash, it was very easy because they were just on a spiritual high, and that's all that was needed at the time. They didn't have to overthink anything, and they didn't have the challenges. Going back inside, a couple of lines after the parentheses. Guys, in Amana is yeah. By Neka Lias Ahavas Hashem Kvua Belev Kol Ish Lias Bezlavas Lavadas Hashem V'Toirasa Gam Mibli Shenis Erim Izeh Ava Rabba. Ava Rabba was not yet needed in the times of the first Beis Hamikdash. Ach, Doir Achar Doir, one generation after the next generation. Kinismatu Halavavis Hashlemus Ba'avedas Hashem Ava Aza Berish Be'esh. We started developing taivas, and we started getting attracted to things outside of spirituality. There was no more such thing as just serving God with love. The only way was if we were able to be mamshech ahava rabba. B'chol proteim, heim bebechinas su'mera, b'chol achumrius shebegemara, u'peiskim, v'heim bebechinas v'asei tov, v'divrei musar shebe'agodis, u'mila de'avos. Ayin tova sheyiras chavere b'tov, ayin, v'ro'as re'eu al yachshev b'liber, v'chein leiv tov, v'chover tov chulum. We had to introduce the concept in ourselves that we opened ourselves up to a completely different type of experience. Part of it happens from Sur Merah, by when every minute of your day, for example, from the minute you wake up, the way you have the Negelwasser by your bed, and the first thing you do, and the way you hold your hands together. Literally, every single part of our day has the ability to feel connected to something. But he's saying something else on the flip side over here. He says, on the other side, we had to learn how to love other people in order to learn how to be loved by Ahava Rabba, by the Eibishter. What does that mean? We have to learn how to love. I'm just going to go back to the words for a minute. It says, Ayin Toive Shigira es Chaveiro B'Toiv Ayin. That you should be able to see your friend b'tov ayin v'ras re'eyu al yachshev, that you should not think about the negative aspects of someone else. V'libay v'chen leiv tov v'chover tov. This idea, is that really such a difficult thing? I mean, what is the the difficult thing is when a person is not lovable, can you still love them? It says when you learn how to love someone, not because of if they fit your paradigm and if they happen to be a perfect match for you, that when you learn how to love someone in that state, and you can unlock that love that the Eibishter has, which is Ahava Rabba, which is something that the Eibishter gives you sort of as something much bigger than the simple connection that you have with the Eibishter. We're going to skip this parentheses for now. This is a long parentheses, actually. So we're almost already done with the mimer, by the way, so don't fall asleep just yet. We're probably about 12 lines from the bottom after these parentheses. He says, V'zeu shekosov. So we went off on a tangent. We started off by saying that a father can be mater the nether of his daughter. And then he says, okay, let's understand what the idea is of having all these minhagim and mitzvahs, and just goes off and the whole thing, how we have to have this connecting tool. How does this really fit together? And he says, now let me take you back to what we said. What does it mean that her father heard her neder? Heini avia isa sha'av mefer es haneder ki mebechinas ahava rabba. From the Ahava Rabba that the father has, who mefer, that's how he's mefer, that's how he annuls and eliminates that neder from his daughter. Now here he adds in one line which is very interesting. He says, Ve'ein chovush matir atzmoi ki im al yidei midas Ahava Rabba b'chinas avia. So the whole thing until now was, how do you unlock Ahava Rabba? What can you do? And now he's going back to put the two things together, and he says that really when you're trapped, you cannot escape on your own unless someone helps you out. We could probably spend hours discussing this one line, but the main thing that I think is specifically hidden in this line is that even these mitzvahs d'Rabbanan, even there's a book that was once written. I remember that I actually looked it up today. There's a whole book that was written for Jewish therapists on how to recognize if a person is just stringent in their religion or if they have OCD. And it was endorsed by Rabbanim and everything, but OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, which is a mental illness. But sometimes it's very difficult to really know the difference between someone that is very medactic and very careful with his Judaism and someone that is actually mentally ill.
Lines are blurred.
Yeah. And there's a whole book. You can buy a book that helps you identify the difference. Now he says, even this thing, which is designed to give you this beautiful connection to God, can also turn you into a prisoner of self. He says, we look at people. The obvious ones are the people that say Shema, Yisrael, like saying it 15 times just in case that the mem did not come out correctly, where we see that people, it crosses over into an illness, but it can also be someone that hijacks it. Years ago, I was on a Hatzalah call, and there was a child that was not well, and we picked up the child in school, and the parent, and we had to go pick up the parent, and the parent said, "You're not wearing tzitzis," and we were telling the parent, "This is not what we're worried about right now."
The kid wasn't wearing tzitzis? Yeah, but he was sick.
The point is that
he medical attention.
So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing it up just because, is it about you or is it about being close to the Eibishter? Yeah. Right now, that's not what the Eibishter wants from you. Right now, your job is to make sure that your child is okay. And we have to be sometimes really, really careful to understand, am I crossing over a line over here? Ein chovesh mati atzma is a concept that when you're trapped inside, you can get trapped to a point where you can no longer escape from this trap. And even when you know that you want to get out of it, think about a smoker that says that they know they need to stop smoking, but they can't stop smoking. But they know it's bad for them and they want to stop it, but they can't stop because sometimes when you're trapped in something, you can't actually get it, and you need someone else to come in and help you out. So when you have all these beautiful things, the minhagim, you have to remember what is really the point of the minhagim and the mitzvahs d'Rabbanan is to give you a closer connection to the Eibishter and to make you bring down the Ava Rabba from the Eibishter. But if it becomes a negative thing, then you need to have something else. So that's Dafka Aviyah. There's a special connection between a father and a daughter. When a father looks at the child, at their son, very often they're going to judge, like they want their son to be maybe a better version of themselves, or maybe the thing that they always wanted them to be. But a father's love for a daughter is generally a very unencumbered love. And that's why the example of the Hava Rabbah that we're giving over here is of a father and his daughter. But he's saying over here that even though we brought down this mashal of this daughter and her nadarim, and then we said that it brings down the father comes in with his Ahava Rabbah and he's mater. So that can be interpreted in two different ways. Number one, it can free you from the shackles of Olam Hazeh, that you're not trapped within your own within this world. But it also means that sometimes you need to have. What does it mean to us? Sometimes when we look at a person, our natural tendency is to help them. We want them to be better. Let's say like we see someone doing something wrong, but they don't need that from us. Why? Because they're already trapped. They're already trapped in their own world, and we can't help them by telling them, "No, maybe no, do it better." It's like, I know I'm supposed to do it better. What do you want from me? I'm worthless. I can't do this. I tried 100 times. What do you want from me? He says, what is your job at that moment? Your job has to be a Hava Rabbah. I once heard from someone that someone came to someone and was like, give me some marriage advice. Before they got married, they wanted to have some advice. How do I make a good marriage? It's the best way to change your spouse is to accept them the way they are. What does that mean? How do I change someone by accepting them the way they are? It says, first, you need to show that your love for them is not conditional on how they are. And the more you reinforce that love is pure, then they will automatically want to be better, and they will feel empowered to be better. And the same thing with a child. When a child is in a state, for example, that they're trapped, at their chovush, they become a nether, and a nether also means, what is the idea of a nether? That you're trapped. What is a nether? You decided that you're going to make something forbidden for yourself, or you're trapped. You've become essentially, and you need to have someone that is above it and just has this Ava Rabbah that is able to free them. It's actually, you said that the pasuk right next to them, the pasuk is like, if he's not matter, then she's trapped in this nether. But if he is mattered, then she's free to do as she wants. So we need to sometimes, at the same time that we have to work on ourselves to add these stringencies in our life so that we can get closer to the Eibishter, and that's the ultimate purpose. But when we see, for example, in someone else, that it's actually distancing them. For a long time, we had guests in our house that were previously from communities, and they had left. And that's a very interesting challenge, because you're dealing not with people that are interested and they're coming with an open mind about Yiddishkeit. They come pretty much with a closed mind. But I noticed one of the interesting things is that all the things that we highlight about Yiddishkeit is what becomes a negative for them. They're like, oh, so God cares about my fingernail? Okay, yeah, Like all the little details that make for us bring beauty. So what do you do? What do you do with a person like that? You just invite them. Just sit by my Shabbos table. Just be here. Just be a guest. Just have a rabbah. Why? Because you need to know that I accept you. I accept you because you're the Eibishter's child, and you're Chelik Elokah, and it's you. I accept you. Then, once you know that there's a value to you, that's when you can start working on your own avodah. I'm adding this in, even though the Alter Rebbe doesn't say this outright, but he's using over here, he's using a very interesting lashon, which is indicative that ein chovush mateh. It doesn't really fit together with the idea of what your avodah is, because we're telling you that you have to add in your avodah of the Rabbanan and Minhagim. So it seems like you could do something. You could do something to connect yourself. So why does it say that you cannot do this on your own and you need to have someone else come in? It says because both are true. You absolutely could do things for yourself, but sometimes the avodah is Ava Rabbah, because if that's what's needed. I can take this even further, and there's also not discussed over here about the Rebbe, but then came Chassidus into the world. He discusses over here first the first Beis HaMikdash, which was when Teresh B'Tzav was enough. Then he talks about, then came along the second by Sheni, and all the Mishnah, the Gemara, and all the mitzvahs, the Rabbanan, all the Siyagim, all the Minhagim, all the Mefarshim, to build up that strength. And then came Chassidus. What was the purpose of Chassidus? Because we reached a point where, for a lot of people, even those things, even those Minhagim, and even those mitzvahs, the Rabbanan, became just in a way an imprisonment. So we had to bring in the light of Chassidus into this world to introduce a whole new concept of a depth, which is the zelo mazeh of what the world is dealing with in the times of Mashiach. Again, not explicitly.
Something to what you said. It's very interesting. You said that sometimes people are trapped.
Yeah.
And you, as a bystander, know they have what it takes. They have the tools to get themselves out from that situation. So you say you have to have avarabba. The avarabba is not only just to show love and acceptance, it's also sensitivity. The fact that this guy is not getting out, and he knows how to get out, but he's not doing it. If he's chosen to take the low road and throw in the towel, and he's in pain, then you have to have sensitivity. Mm-hmm. So yes, avarabba, accept him, but also appreciate that you know he can get out, but he's not getting out. As long as he's not getting out, he's in pain. Have the sensitivity. It's a step further.
But I'm going to add to that also. We don't know if a person can truly get out. Like I want to tell you, people. I don't know if anybody over here has ever experienced this, but people that have experienced true anxiety. When I'm talking about anxiety, I'm talking about almost a medical level of anxiety. One of the natural things for other people is to say, okay, snap out of it, okay? Yeah. This cup is not going to eat you. You know, like that's the natural tendency of other people. Yeah. But for them, it's not like they have the choice. They know that the cup is not going to eat them, you know, al pi derech hateva, but you're in a state of mind where you're not truly free to experience things the way you know you should.
Right.
So it's very dangerous to, like, you can't even judge whether or not the person can make the right choice or not, because the reason why they could or can't make the right choice, we're not privy to.
They could just harder. I mean, you could say, are they on the level when Zayas Kishin that they were serving the Beit Zara, right? But we sort of told that they were punished and they had to defeat Chashis not to do it.
Right.
Even if the person with mental illness, he could snap at it, but it's much harder for him. He could. It's just not as easy as for other people.
It takes effort.
Yeah, but the question is, what is your? The question is, in a situation like that, what is your role for them? Your role for yourself is, you're 100% right. You have to always work on yourself to try to use every tool.
And he could snap out.
That's not your job. You see, that's the thing. We're not allowed to.
If we don't believe that he can snap out, why should he believe that he can snap out?
So how do you believe that he can snap out? By showing him, by showing him avarabba. What's the avarabba?
Yeah.
You're showing him that you have an intrinsic value that goes beyond your limitation. There's something bigger inside of you that you're not feeling right now, maybe. And therefore, you are the sum of your challenges, and you can't experience this right now.
Sensitivity to the pain.
Right.
Also very.
But I'm saying it has to come. We can't judge if someone else is in a position right now. You never, it says one of the big differences, for example, by us and Chassidus versus some of other interpretations is Perek Lamed Beis Tanya. It says, what does it mean? It's like you can't ever judge someone else unless you are them, meaning you're truly living.
We don't know how difficult it is.
Yeah, so your job, I'm saying, this Ahava Rabbah is what allows a person to really unlock that in themselves. You're right. The Eibishter gives everybody the tools, but your role in that particular situation is what I'm referring to with the Ahava Rabbah.
Is this not what we're referring to as like the Avocado or something else? Or is it the same thing or just named the same way?
Unconditional love. It's just an outpour which doesn't have any rhyme or logic, just for the fact that you love the person.
So it's an ahava. He's gonna actually say it. We don't have time to do it inside, I believe. But what he says towards the end is that we have to bring an ahava that comes from a place of chachma, not from bina, because bina is the place where everything is measured, and basically as much love as you deserve is, you do the right thing, I do the right thing by you. That's how the concept of bina and das works. But he says what you need to access in Ava Rabbah comes from a place of the nekudas hachachma, where there's no judgment, where there's an openness, and that ahava is something that is brought about. Now the Alter Rebbe, we're getting tools over here, and he's telling you what you need to do. And I'm telling you that we can all walk away from here. We can all walk away knowing that we can make a choice every time that we do a minute, and every time we do something, like when we put on a blech on Shabbos, or when we do something extra, every little thing can help unlock infinite avarabba from the Eibishter. So that's the avodah that we can take away. But there's also another element.
You're saying is like in Tanya he describes avarabba as that shaykh to tzaddikim.
Yeah.
Not necessarily to regular people. What is he referring to over here?
So the avarabba from the Eibishter, mainly this Maimon really is talking about the avarabba of the Eibishter. He's using the pasuk of V'shama via as Nedorel, as Nidro. He's using that pasuk to give us an understanding of what this means from the Eibishter to Yidden. So we're not capable to have necessarily the same level of ahava that a tzaddik can have, but we still have to strive to essentially show unconditional love even if we're not there. Like that's the, I'm saying that would be the human avodah as a benefit. So I'm saying in this particular instance, what it would mean is not fake it till you make it, but I'm saying you have to do essentially what avarabba would look like.
Right.
I guess it's a but it's not fake. It's real.
No, it's real, but
you may not be there yet.
Yeah.
Okay, so he finishes off the Maimer and is talking about Hataras Nedarim, Kol Nidre, on Yom Kippur, which is what happens on like Kol Nidre on Yom Kippur. So actually, if you just look at it as a tefillah, it's a very interesting tefillah. That this is the tefillah of Yom Kippur, like everything that I took upon myself, everything that I will take upon myself. Like you're saying, everything. Don't believe anything that I say. Don't hold anything against me. But he's explaining that this is the idea of to be matter yourself from the prison of self. What Hataras Nedarim is that every time on Yom Kippur you unlock this potential to say that I'm not shackled by what I have made my reality. I'm open to go into this new year, and we also know in Chassidus that it says like when you are that way, then the Eibishter is also going to repay you. And we should experience the avarabba in its complete state, as it's Hashem b'karev mamish with the coming of Mashiach.
Amen.